Everyone knew that Jaden Lee spent 15 million just to make me famous, only to spite his white moonlight. I was merely a stand-in. Other than a voice that resembled hers, I had nothing that could make him stay. Later, I planned a proposal at my concert. Jaden Lee sneered lazily and said, "Chloe Lopez, I won't marry you. Even if you corner me in front of tens of thousands of people, it's useless." But he still showed up. He sat in the front row, watching as I stood on stage, holding a bouquet of roses, only to call out another man's name. That day, everyone said the young master of the Lee family had gone mad. He stormed into the bedroom, trying to find the love token he had given me, only to discover a sheet of music. The title of the song? Goodbye. All the assistants knew, I was going to propose at my concert. The wedding gown had been fitted, the bouquet of roses ordered. My agent Tim came over to check the final staging and lighting cues with me. After confirming every detail, she set down her clipboard and exhaled softly. "Jaden heard you're planning to propose during the concert." My hand trembled slightly. "What was his reaction?" I asked quietly. "Nothing much," Tim hesitated, then added in a low voice, "He just said, even if you propose in front of a massive crowd, it's useless. He still won't marry you." I let out a breath and nodded. "I understand." Jaden wouldn't care. His white moonlight, Monica, had just returned from overseas. All his attention was now on her. She came back on the exact day of my 3rd anniversary with Jaden. That night, I waited for him until midnight, watching the candlelight dinner slowly go cold. Finally, I couldn't resist calling him. "Jaden, can you come home? Today's our anniversary. I've been preparing a gift for you for a long time." On the other end, his voice was indifferent, almost casual. "Chloe, be good." "I know, but..." Before I could finish, his patience snapped. "What did you prepare? A ring? A bouquet? Chloe Lopez, after all these years, do you still not understand what we are?" The line went dead. Only the busy tone echoed through the quiet room. I sat silently, sipping my wine. It tasted both sour and bitter. Of course, I knew exactly what I was to Jaden. A cliché. I was just a substitute, for Monica, his white moonlight. With her, Jaden was caught between love and hate. They had grown up together. When Monica was 16, she won a folk music contest and rose to instant stardom. From then on, she became a name in the music industry. But 3 years ago, she left Jaden and flew to Austria. In retaliation, he found me. I debuted under the gimmick Little Monica, with a clear and lazy voice that sounded exactly like hers. Jaden poured in money and resources. I rose to fame quickly, and soon became one of the most sought-after new generation singers. Out there, I was adored. Fans loved me, critics praised me. But in private, Jaden never saw me as anything more than a shadow. When he got drunk, he'd hold me close, his voice low and cruel in my ear. "Baby, your voice is beautiful. But no matter how beautiful, it's still counterfeit." I always responded with silence. I had no choice. Back when we had just started, I was that humble. I was 20, singing in a bar for the first time, just to scrape together surgery money for my grandma. When some sleazy customers tried to grope me, it was Jaden who kicked them away and pulled me to safety. Under the night sky, dressed in a tailored suit, he leaned down and looked at me gently. "Your name's Chloe, right? Do you want to be a star? If you do, come with me." Over the next 3 years, I gained fame and fortune. My grandma recovered. And I, once a timid girl full of self-doubt, became the dazzling starlet smiling brightly at award ceremonies. Everything I had, was given to me by Jaden. I once thought, as long as he didn't say goodbye, I'd stay by his side forever. But unfortunately, Monica came back. One night, Jaden and I were drinking at his private vineyard when Monica called via video chat. On screen, she wore no makeup, yet her beauty was almost blinding. "Well, Jaden, am I interrupting your date?" Jaden smiled and pulled me closer to the camera. "Not really. Just in time for introductions, Monica, this is my girlfriend, Chloe." Monica gave me a cold once-over. "So, Miss Lopez, how does it feel living off my leftovers?" "That's not quite fair," Jaden said as he sipped his wine, voice flat. "Sure, people used to say Chloe looked like you. But she's found her own style now. She's been writing her own songs, every one of them a hit. What do you say? Want me to play you a few?" Monica bit her lip and snapped, "No need," before slamming the call shut. Jaden stared at the now black screen, his expression darkening. He tried to keep drinking but couldn't contain his emotions. He smashed the wine glass against the floor. The red wine splashed across my chest. It bloomed on my white dress like blood seeping from a broken heart. That night, while Jaden was in the shower, his phone suddenly lit up. It was a message from Monica. "Jaden, you win. I've bought a ticket to return to the country tomorrow. Just one question. You once said, as long as I turned back, you'd always be waiting for me. Does that still count? Jaden came out of the bathroom. I lay under the covers, pretending to be fast asleep. Eyes shut, I heard him pick up his phone. The next second, he threw on some clothes and stormed out, without so much as a word to me. The front door slammed shut with a bang. I slowly sat up, staring around the familiar Lee residence. I knew that would be the last time I ever stepped foot in this place. For the next 3 months, Jaden was with Monica. Whenever I called, he would hang up without a word. Rumors began circulating in the industry. President Lee's white moonlight has returned. Chloe is trying to force a proposal. Many reporters came to interview me. I said nothing. When they asked Jaden, he happened to be having dinner with Monica. I guess that's why he was particularly impatient with the paparazzi. Me and Chloe? She's my artist. What makes you think we were ever in a relationship? Beside him, Monica looked utterly pleased, as if victory was already hers. When the article reached my hands, my assistant fumed. Jaden is such a jerk. Don't say that about him, I said softly. Her eyes turned red. I smiled and patted her hand. All right, let's focus on work. My concert's next month, there's a lot to do. Truthfully, public opinion had always leaned toward me. After all, everyone believed Jaden and I had been secretly involved for 3 years. And now he was denying everything outright. Jaden read the comments too. So when he learned I planned to propose at my concert, he immediately assumed I was trying to manipulate him with public pressure. The day before the concert, he texted me. It was the first message he'd sent since Monica came back. Chloe, don't do anything stupid. We were never really in a relationship, were we? I spent the money to make you famous. All I asked was that you sing me to sleep every night. We shared a bed, but we never slept together. The only time I called you my girlfriend was to provoke Monica. I read every word in silence. I didn't reply to a single message. I thought Jaden wouldn't show up at my concert. But he did. Dressed in a black suit and black shirt, seated in the front row. For a moment, he looked just like the man I first met. I sang through every song on the set list. He sat there, listening to each one. Finally, the lights dimmed. All background music faded away. I stepped onto the stage, dressed in a wedding gown. The rumors were true. Chloe really was going to propose on stage. Gasps erupted through the crowd. Jaden looked at me. His dark eyes were like a deep lake, waves rippling softly beneath the surface. A reflection of emotions he couldn't suppress. Jaden, turns out you're just like me. No matter how calm or rational you pretend to be, your heart still won't let you be completely indifferent. I closed my eyes briefly and lifted the microphone to my lips. Thank you all for coming tonight. I hope you'll witness a moment that's important to me. I've been in love with a man for 3 whole years. Every song I've written was inspired by him. I often dream of what it'd be like to share a life together. Even in dreams, it felt like happiness. But for various reasons, he's never proposed to me. I smiled. That's okay. This time, I'll be the brave one. I love you. Will you marry me? In that instant, 1,000 eyes turned to Jaden. And in the next, I called out another name. Will you marry me, Alex? The spotlight swiveled to the corner of the venue. There sat an elderly woman with silver hair, my grandmother. She smiled and gently patted the young man beside her. He was slender, graceful, wearing a simple white shirt. He looked like a fir tree rising from snow. Alex stared at me, eyes shimmering with disbelief and tears. Our eyes met. In that moment, beneath all the lights, it felt like there were only the two of us. In the front row, Jaden rose to his feet. His face turned to ice. His gaze trembled, hands shook. He looked like he was about to shatter on the spot. Chloe, are you playing with me? I didn't understand why Jaden was angry. He was the one who said, we were never in a relationship. But to claim we were completely innocent? That wasn't entirely true either. After all, for 3 years, more than 1,000 nights, we shared the same bed, slept side by side, our breaths intertwined. At first, it was just so I could sing him to sleep. Jaden had severe insomnia. He'd tried everything, ASMR, sleeping pills, nothing worked. Only my voice could calm him down. I used to hum softly until his breathing evened out, then tiptoe away. But even the slightest sound sometimes woke him. One rainy night, just as I was about to get up, Jaden, eyes closed, suddenly reached out and grabbed my wrist. Don't go, he whispered. The scent of snow cedar cologne and warm sheets filled my nose. I could barely speak. Then, where should I go? Jaden smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling handsomely. Sleep here. He patted the space beside him. Cold sweat trickled down my back. No, I heard myself say. Jaden looked at me. His smile faded. And when he wasn't smiling, he became the man everyone feared. The cold, reclusive air of the Lee family. You're rejecting me? He asked, voice like ice. I can't, I said softly, biting my lip. Jaden said nothing more. He turned over, buried his face in the blanket, and didn't say another word. I stood there for a long moment, unsure of what to do. Finally, I left, quiet and defeated. That night, the rain was torrential. My umbrella was useless, I was soaked to the bone. I took some cold medicine and, despite a heavy fever, dragged myself to the filming site of the music variety show. The executive director, who had always been warm and enthusiastic with me, greeted me with a stiff, insincere smile. He told me I'd been replaced, last minute. This program had been scheduled for a long time. It was my best opportunity of the year. Just the night before, the director had still been confirming my set list. Now, staring at his indifferent face, I suddenly understood. Jaden had made a call. He could elevate me with resources. And he could just as easily push me off a cliff. I went home. For half a month, I had no work. All the brand events, endorsements, and ad shoots that had been scheduled long ago, disappeared overnight. My phone was eerily silent, as if the entire world had abandoned me. Only one message came in. It was a payment reminder from the pharmaceutical agent. He said the special medication my grandmother needed would become harder to obtain next quarter. If we still wanted it, we'd have to prepay now. That night, I went to Jaden's house. He glanced at the pajamas I had brought and smiled carelessly. "So obedient," he said, lightly rubbing the little bear print on my shirt. He chuckled. "First time?" Tears fell down my cheeks. He brushed them away with his fingertips and murmured softly, "Sleep." Jaden didn't touch me. The bed was large. I curled up in a corner, tossing and turning. At first, I couldn't sleep at all. I just lay there, listening to Jaden's breathing, for hours on end. Later, maybe it was habit. I began to fall asleep to that familiar rhythm. Many nights passed like that. One time, Jaden woke from a nightmare and suddenly pulled me into his arms. "Chloe." He called my name, clinging tightly to me. His body was drenched in cold sweat. His pajamas were soaked. He pressed his forehead to my collarbone, eyes and voice both trembling with moisture. "Don't ever leave me, okay?" In that moment, Jaden looked fragile. Very few people knew his past. He was the child of his father's first wife. Raised by his grandparents from a young age. But by the time he started elementary school, both grandparents had passed away. He returned to a father who had already built a new family. In that lonely boyhood, Monica had been the only warmth. And she too had left him. "Don't leave me, okay?" Jaden repeated in a whisper, like sleep talking. "Chloe, you're all I have." I heard myself reply softly, "Okay." He finally relaxed, holding me tightly as he drifted off to sleep. I listened to his breathing grow steady, and in the darkness, my heart pounded like a drum. It was the first time in my life I had ever shared such physical closeness with a man. His breath warmed the side of my neck. His body heat merged with mine. The way he held me wasn't lust, but something almost indulgent, protective. Rationally, I knew this was not how love began. But biologically, my hormones surged like waves. I turned to look at Jaden's sculpted face in the dark. As if sensing my gaze, he cracked his eyes open just a sliver. "Chloe," he murmured with a faint smile, "did you fall in love with me?" I shook my head. "No." He chuckled and pulled me closer, whispering against my ear, "Liar." In Jaden's world, very few women didn't like him. After Monica left the country, countless women pursued him. Heiresses from elite families, rising celebrity starlets. Jaden always turned them down with a smile. If someone was too persistent, he'd use me. He'd clasp my hand, interlacing our fingers, and show me off in front of them like a trophy. Once the threat was gone, he'd let go of my hand without hesitation. If he was in a foul mood, he'd even wipe his palm with a tissue. As if I had dirted him. That small gesture summed up our entire relationship dynamic. In public, he spoiled me. When I had a 39-degree fever and couldn't even swallow from the pain in my throat, he slipped out of an important shareholders meeting midway. Just to come home and feed me pear soup, spoon by spoon. When a senior artist tried to humiliate me during a variety show recording, Jaden flew back from abroad on the next flight. Dark circles under his eyes from being awake 24 hours straight. Just to stand silently in the corner of the studio. The senior, seeing young Master Lee's stormy expression, didn't dare say another word. Jaden also put thought into every holiday. We soaked in hot springs, toasting quietly with sake while snow blanketed the earth outside. We watched the stars from a cruise ship, listening to blue whales sing through the night. We ran hand in hand through a campus filled with falling cherry blossoms, posing for photos with students about to graduate. Everyone at the Lee residence, the housekeeper, the maids, the chauffeur, the chef. They all told me the same thing: "We've never seen young Master Lee treat anyone this well. He must really love you." But only I knew the truth. One day, I accidentally broke a small glass piano model from his bookshelf. Jaden, who had always been so gentle, suddenly turned ice cold. That piano had been Monica's gift to him on his 16th birthday. I reached out, trembling, to clean up the pieces. "Don't touch it," Jaden barked. "You don't deserve to." How do I describe it? In that moment, it felt like we had always been acting in a play. He was the affectionate male lead. I was the beloved heroine. And then, cut. The director called it. The show ended. The actor playing the prince dropped his smile, and revealed the cold indifference behind the mask. "I'm sorry," I said, voice shaking. "I didn't mean to." Jaden didn't respond. He stared at me with chilling eyes, unblinking. Finally, after a long silence, he said coldly, "Kneel." Shards of broken glass littered the floor. I looked at the sharp edges, my vision trembling. It was just a fleeting moment, but 1,000 memories came rushing back. I remembered the new artist our company had just signed, Eva. She was much younger than me, her face full of untouched collagen. After hearing her audition, the producer casually remarked, "She looks even more like Monica than Chloe ever did." And Eva, like Jaden. Everyone was afraid of him, except her. The moment Jaden appeared, she'd run after him, sweetly calling him Brother Jaden. Jaden smiled as he told the producer, "She's a promising one. Give her some good resources." And so, little by little, some of the opportunities that once belonged to me were handed to Eva. Just the day before, I ran into her in the fitting room. The company had specially borrowed a soft pink mermaid gown from a luxury brand, for me. My agent had told me to come in for a fitting. But when I arrived, the dress was already on Eva. "Pink suits me better, don't you think, Sister Chloe?" Eva turned to look at me, her gaze naive and bold in equal measure, reckless, yet inexplicably confident. I responded calmly, "The brand collaborates with specific artists. This dress was borrowed under my name. You can't wear it." Eva smiled sweetly. I asked Brother Jaden. He said, if I liked it, I could have it. Now, standing amidst the shards of broken glass, I thought of that confident, self-assured look on Eva's face. Then I thought of my grandmother. Sitting on her bed, knitting quietly, pointing at the TV with a proud smile as she spoke to a visiting neighbor. That's my granddaughter. Beautiful voice, isn't it? Maybe I stood there too long. Jaden lost his patience. He turned toward the door. But he had barely taken a few steps when he heard a soft sound behind him. Jaden looked back, his eyes flickered. I had knelt. Right there, in the middle of shattered glass. I didn't move a single piece. I just dropped to my knees. The sharp edges pierced into my calves. Blood seeped out almost instantly. But it was as if I didn't feel any pain. "Jaden, I'm sorry. It was my fault." My voice was soaked in raw humility. "Please don't be angry. You can punish me if you want, just don't ignore me." I forced out each word, "I really can't live without you." The moment I finished speaking, I saw it. The immense satisfaction in Jaden's eyes. Everyone has their preferences. Jaden's was my submission. Monica was too proud. She was the moon hanging in the sky. But me? I was the moonlight reflected in a puddle. Step on me, and I'd shatter. But I'd always come back together again. Always return to lie quietly at his feet. That must have been intoxicating. He knelt down in front of me, gently touching the wound on my leg. I flinched from the pain, but I didn't pull away. Instead, I closed my eyes slightly, like I was savoring the warmth of his hand. Jaden lifted my chin, forcing me to look into his eyes. "Chloe, do you love me this much?" I didn't answer. I blinked once. Twice. And a single, heavy tear rolled down my cheek, falling onto the back of his hand. He flinched, like it burned him, yet his expression twisted in total gratification. Jaden scooped me up in his arms and strode out of the Lee estate. "To the hospital," he told the driver. That night, countless paparazzi captured the scene. Jaden in a black suit, me in a white sleep dress, curled in his arms. People online lost their minds. They called it the most iconic Princess Carrie of the century, between a CEO and his beloved starlet. I read the comments and smiled bitterly. Even though the doctors treated my injuries as quickly as they could, a scar remained on my calf. At first, I tried to cover it up with concealer whenever I attended public events. But one day, Jaden casually remarked, "That scar? It's the mark I left on you." From that day on, I never hid it again. In fact, I went to a famous tattoo artist in the industry, and together, we turned the scar into a blooming vine of thorned roses. Jaden asked me what it meant. In truth, it meant nothing. The design had simply been based on the shape of the scar. But after only a 2-second pause, I told him, "It means, love can wound us. But love can also bloom." Jaden looked satisfied with that answer. He smiled and gently stroked my hair. Later, I still wore that pink mermaid dress to the event. Eva disappeared from the company not long after. The producer told me it was President Lee's decision. He'd said one company shouldn't promote too many artists of the same type. And terminated Eva's contract. Just like that, the company's resources were mine again. To the outside world, I seemed unstoppable, flourishing. But in truth, I was quietly attending therapy. My counselor and I spoke for hours, session after session. Eventually, she handed me a diagnosis. The patient's intimate partner displays traits of a highly dominant personality. This partner oscillates between affectionate reinforcement and emotional abuse, causing the patient to develop signs of Stockholm Syndrome. To release the emotions trapped inside me, I began writing songs. One after another. Sometimes, I even slept in the recording studio. Jaden would come by, drape his suit jacket over me while I slept. When I woke, he'd be standing there, reading my lyrics. His dark, wet eyes glowing with something almost tender. "You've turned our memories into music," he said with a smile. And I nodded obediently. Jaden thought every one of those songs was a love letter to him. He could match each lyric to moments we'd shared. Snowflakes fall into still water / tears drop into wine. We were in a hot spring, drinking sake under heavy snow. A whale sings at 52 Hz / yet you still heard my voice. We were stargazing on a cruise, listening to the song of blue whales. The cherry blossoms fall / I bloom on my own. We had run through a campus flooded with sakura, hand in hand. Jaden never once doubted my love. Even during the concert, every song I performed was one of those. So when I proposed, and the man I called wasn't him, Jaden exploded. Backstage, I looked at my phone. News headlines like, "Chloe proposes on stage, groom is not young Master Lee," were already trending on every platform. Within minutes, it topped the hot search. Just then, my assistant Tim came running in, panic on her face. "I overheard President Lee on the phone. He said he's going to blacklist you." "Let him," I said with a faint smile. Before I could finish speaking, the dressing room door flew open. Jaden barged in, out of breath and flushed with anger. "Chloe, who the hell is Alex?" "My boyfriend," I replied calmly. "Your boyfriend is supposed to be." Jaden stopped mid-sentence. He couldn't continue. Because it was he who, time and again, had reminded me, we're not in a romantic relationship. Even as he basked in the comfort of being loved. I curved my lips into a smile. "President Lee, you're the one who told the world we're nothing more than artist and boss. Our company doesn't forbid artists from dating, does it? So what exactly are you angry about?" Jaden clenched his jaw, fell silent for a moment, then growled through his teeth, "Chloe, stop playing dumb. Don't forget, everything you have, I gave you." I looked at him. He looked back at me. Those deep black eyes were full of smug certainty. Of course he felt confident. For the past 3 years, every time he threw that line at me, I would cave, unconditionally. But this time, I smiled. "I'll return it all." Jaden's eyes widened sharply. "I'll give everything back," I repeated. Tonight was my farewell performance. From now on, I'm leaving the industry. For the first time in his life, I saw Jaden panic. I had already changed clothes, picked up my things, and walked toward the door. He blocked my path, his voice shaking. "Chloe." At that moment, he realized. He no longer had anything he could use to control me. So he couldn't keep me anymore. I gave him a polite nod. "Goodbye, President Lee." I stepped around his stunned figure and walked out with quiet resolve. After a few steps, I suddenly remembered something. I turned back. Jaden. He looked at me, eyes flickering with hope. I smiled. "There's one last song I wrote, it's in the bedroom. It's a gift for our 3-year anniversary." Chloe left. It took Jaden a long time to recover from his daze, even with people calling his name around him. He rushed home without a second's delay, storming into the bedroom, searching everywhere. Not on the table. Not in the drawers. Finally, beneath the pillow, he found the last thing I left him. He'd imagined it would be roses or a diamond ring. But it was just a demo of a song. The title was, "Goodbye. Thank you for the encounter. At last, I can say goodbye." Jaden didn't know why. But that one ordinary line shattered him. He remembered a night long ago, holding me tightly, begging me never to leave him. I had promised, hadn't I? Why did she lie? She told me she loved me, so many times. Was it all fake? Wait. Jaden stood frozen in the bedroom, as if a bucket of ice water had been poured over his head. Because he realized something terrifying. Chloe had never said she loved him. It was always him, asking over and over. And her replies were always silence. But Jaden had been too certain. And Chloe, too quiet and yielding. So he'd taken that silence as consent. So then, could it be? She never loved him at all? Had it all just been for resources? For her career? Jaden nearly lost his mind. He called every industry contact he had, producers, directors, showrunners. Threatening to pull investments if any of them dared work with Chloe again. Very quickly, the news spread, the Lee family group was blacklisting Chloe. Chloe wanted fame, didn't she? Resources? A future? Now that everything was cut off, she'd have no choice but to come back to him. Jaden comforted himself with that thought. But she didn't. 1 day passed. 2 days. Many days went by. Jaden waited for Chloe to reach out. But she never did. The tactic that had always worked in the past. This time, it failed. Jaden truly began to panic. He finally realized that when Chloe had stood in the dressing room backstage and said she was retiring, she meant it. Like the old-time actresses who disappeared from the spotlight after marriage. She was done singing. And she no longer needed him. For the first time in his life, Jaden went to look for Chloe. In the past, all he had to do was call, and Chloe would rush to his home without question. But now, during their first real silence, Jaden was the one breaking it. Chloe's apartment was tucked away at the end of a quiet alley. It was small, but delicately arranged. But now, most of the place had been emptied out. Miss Lopez has already moved, the landlord said as he opened the door for Jaden. She ended her lease. Said if anyone came looking, I could show them her room. The landlord led Jaden to Chloe's old bedroom. There, a huge photo wall. In every photo, the same 2 people, Chloe and the man in the white shirt. What was his name again? Oh, right. Alex. In the photos, they sat together in a hot spring surrounded by snow. They smiled at the camera on a cruise ship, the night sky sparkling behind them. They held hands beneath a canopy of falling cherry blossoms, like a couple of college students on the verge of graduation. Jaden began to tremble. All this time, he had believed. Every song Chloe wrote was a love letter to him. But he was wrong. So wrong. Those songs might have been love letters. But they weren't addressed to him. Jaden must have seen those photos I left behind. Because he was completely, utterly crushed. At 10:30 a.m. I received a call from him. Across the vast distance, his voice was hoarse, nearly choked. Chloe, who is Alex, really? I stayed silent for a long time. Then I smiled softly. You couldn't find out, could you? Of course Jaden would have tried to investigate Alex's background. But no matter how deep he dug, he would never uncover the truth. Doesn't matter, I told him gently. I'm leaving the country, with him. And just like that, for the first time in his life, Jaden Lee yielded before me. He said, Chloe, please don't go. I'm begging you. And for the first time in my life, I refused Jaden. Thank you for everything we shared, but I can finally say goodbye. I gently hummed that final melody, then hung up the phone. After that, I pulled out my SIM card, snapped it in 2, and tossed it into the trash bin. Goodbye, Jaden. Goodbye, Alex. From then on, Jaden searched for Chloe for years. But she had vanished. As if she had never existed. When he finally recovered from the initial breakdown, Jaden kept telling himself. It doesn't matter. She was just a substitute. Monica was back now. What did it matter if a counterfeit shattered? He tried his best to focus on Monica. Monica, too, had changed. She was no longer cold or aloof. She would pout sweetly and ask him to accompany her to the recording studio, to pour resources into making her shine. You spent $15 million promoting that stand-in. How much are you going to spend on me now? Jaden wanted to promise her something. But in the end, all he said was, let's hear you sing first. Monica was disappointed. But she still sang the demo written for her by the producer. Jaden's brow furrowed deeper and deeper. Something's off, he said. The producer swapped in another song. Monica sang again. Jaden's reaction didn't change. Something was wrong. He couldn't say what exactly. Only that it didn't sound the way he remembered. Why don't you sing like before? He asked Monica. Did you change your technique? Why does it sound so strange now? Finally, the producer couldn't take it anymore. President Lee, Monica's voice and vocal technique are exactly the same as when she debuted. Nothing has changed. At that moment, Jaden felt like he'd been struck by lightning. He suddenly realized. The one he truly loved might have been Chloe. And Chloe, in the later years, had become nothing like Monica at all. Jaden started listening to Chloe's albums again. Each song was a chronicle of her love with Alex. Every time he listened, it tore him apart. But he kept replaying them, like a form of self-inflicted torture. There was only one song he couldn't bear to hear. Goodbye. Even though it was the only song she'd truly written for him. A long time passed. One day, Jaden was dining at a restaurant, when he spotted someone familiar. He was sure he'd seen the man before, but couldn't place him. It wasn't until near the end of his meal that it hit him. Alex. He had seen him during the on-stage proposal. Back then, the lighting was too dazzling. Even Jaden couldn't make out Alex's face clearly. But today, the man was wearing a white shirt. Just like that night. And something in the silhouette sparked Jaden's memory. Without even thinking, Jaden walked over and sat down across from him. The man had been cutting his steak. He paused, a little surprised, but soon smiled politely. You're President Jaden Lee, aren't you? His voice was gentle and composed. Jaden found himself speechless for a moment. After a long pause, he said in a low voice, You're Alex, right? The man smiled silently. Chloe, how is she doing? Jaden asked. Another long silence. Then, the man adjusted his glasses, chuckled softly, and said, Perhaps it's time I told you the truth. I don't know if Chloe is doing well. Jaden's eyes widened. You two divorced? The man shook his head. We were never married. He reached into the inner pocket of his suit, and handed Jaden a business card. Jaden looked down. Albert, psychotherapist. Jaden began to tremble. What did that mean? My name is Albert. For more than a year, I was Miss Chloe's psychotherapist. She was trapped in a deeply painful relationship. We discussed it at length, and eventually, we agreed that the only way out was to leave the person causing her pain. To fully commit to that choice, she asked me to help her stage a performance. I agreed. Jaden clutched the card, frozen in place. After what felt like an eternity, Albert noticed Jaden's lips curl into a strange smile. He murmured, So Chloe did love me, after all. Those songs, she really wrote them for me. Alex wasn't real. Albert looked at him in silence, then said softly, Mr. Lee, if I were you, I'd feel heartbroken instead. Miss Chloe loved you. And still chose to cut you off so completely. Don't you wonder what you did to push her that far? Jaden flinched as if struck again. Albert paused, then added one last thing. There's something you should know. Maybe you forgot, or maybe it just never mattered to you. Alex was the name Chloe used. The first time she sang at a bar. Jaden's eyes snapped up. Albert shrugged. She said, when you pulled her out of that crowd of sleazy men. She truly did fall for you. Then, Albert turned and walked away. Jaden sat in place, unable to come back to himself for a long time. So, saying goodbye to Alex was, in truth, saying goodbye to the version of herself that once loved Jaden. If only he had remembered. If only, in the days following the concert proposal, he had remembered that Alex was once the name Chloe used. Maybe, there would still have been a chance for them. But he never did. And so she left. Her back turned, resolute, never once looking back. Jaden's emotional state began to deteriorate rapidly. He had always struggled with bipolar disorder and severe insomnia. And in the past, he could only fall asleep listening to Chloe's voice. Now, even after playing her albums on loop, he still couldn't sleep. That was when he finally realized. It hadn't been her songs that brought him peace. It had been Chloe herself. His condition worsened. Jaden began drinking heavily. He drank through the nights, collapsing into unconsciousness. And even then, he would still see her face in his dreams. He awoke in a hospital. His secretary, tear-streaked, told him the diagnosis, stomach cancer. It was as if the universe took pity on Jaden. Because in the second week after his diagnosis, he saw a photo online. A seaside concert abroad. A female vocalist, radiant and vibrant, singing with a local band. Jaden stared at the picture for a long, long time. He looked again and again. Just to be sure. It was Chloe. It had been 3 years since I started performing with the band by the sea. It was a small island, untouched by commercialization. Few tourists came. The locals were blonde and blue-eyed. No one recognized me. I experimented with musical styles I'd never tried back home. Life was quiet, yet full. Until one day, I saw Jaden again. He had lost a lot of weight. His skin was pale, his expression haggard, almost unrecognizable. I used to think that if we ever met again, my emotions would stir, that I'd be a mess inside. But now, to my own surprise, I felt peaceful. I walked toward him and greeted him like an old friend. He looked at me, his eyes suddenly misting over. Chloe. The sun was just setting. I invited him to sit with me on the rocks by the beach. To share a beer and watch the sunset. Jaden's gaze drifted to my calf, where the tattoo now covered the old scar. I followed his gaze and smiled. You once asked what this tattoo meant, I said. And the answer I gave you back then was a lie. But now, I truly like it. Its meaning is, after the thorns, there will always be bloom. Jaden was silent for a long time, then asked in a low voice, Chloe, you did love me, didn't you? I smiled softly, free of resentment. Yes, I did. It was the first time I'd ever directly answered him. I saw him exhale, long and heavy, like something inside him had finally let go. But then I added, calmly, but I love freedom and dignity more. Under the setting sun, I saw his shoulders stiffen. After a long while, Jaden lowered his head. Tears welled in his eyes. Chloe, I'm sorry. I smiled and shook my head. The apology had come too late. But still, I said. It's okay. Not because I had forgiven him. But because I had let it go. It was something I told myself. That it's okay. Because once we pass through the thorns, we will eventually find the rose. Jaden left. As we sat watching the sunset, he had already noticed. My lower belly had begun to swell ever so slightly. He didn't ask. He was afraid of the answer. But once he walked away, he couldn't help looking back. He saw Chloe returning to the stage, laughing softly with the drummer. He was a handsome, wild-looking man with shoulder-length hair. Someone who played drums with a kind of manic brilliance. But looked at Chloe with the gentlest of eyes. She had truly begun a new life. And he was still trapped in the past. A sharp pain shot through his stomach. Jaden suddenly realized. He might never make it back home. His body, worn and frail, could no longer endure a 12-hour flight. And truth be told, there was nothing back in his country worth returning to anymore. So perhaps, he would stay here. I strummed the final chord on my guitar. Somewhere in the distance, I heard a splash. It sounded like something had fallen into the sea. I looked out over the ocean. The waves were calm, vast, embracing the world. The sun had finally sunk beneath the horizon. The water shimmered like molten gold. I don't know why. But a single tear escaped my eye, falling silently to the ground. I wiped it away and looked up at the sky. The heavens stretched high and endless. Those once dear, had drifted far away. And I, having walked to the edge of all things, had finally found love. And freedom.